Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Amateur Commentator. This is again our Formula One segment where we'll be talking about the Italian Grand Prix at Imola. But before that, I would request everyone to kindly like, share, and subscribe our content. And please write to us on how we can improve things and what do you find good and what are the areas that you would like to see us improve. Now, I have with me Anshul. Hi, Anshul.
I saw.
So it was a good day for Red Bull fans in Italy, although there were a lot of Ferrari fans hoping to see Charles Leclerc win another race. But it seemed like Red Bull had everything planned out. It was a day of complete dominance. In fact, a weekend of complete dominance because the sprint also went their way and so did the qualifying. So, what are your initial thoughts on how the race at Imola went, and what were some of the positives that you saw apart from the fact that Verstappen did win?
Yeah, I think it was a action-packed weekend for Red Bull. They finished 1-2. Norris, especially McLaren, also had a good race before Ricciardo crashed in the first lap of the race. But Norris finished third. It was a good podium for him. He was driving actually well, and they have came very far after the first race of the season. Russell is doing well. He has consistently scored in top 5 position in all the races. He secured the 4th position, followed by Bottas. Bottas is driving really well in the season, and it will be really interesting to see going ahead when he is fighting with someone like Lewis Hamilton or Russell for the similar spot, which happened in this race. I think probably a couple of more laps, Bottas would have been there to compete for the 4th place, which Russell took. It was unlucky for Leclerc. I would not say unlucky, but he was really pushing it for the 2nd position, and in doing so, he slipped on one of the chicane, and that handed him the 6th position. But he recovered really well, bringing up himself 2-3 places in the last few laps. So yeah, it was a good race for Red Bull overall. A bit unlucky for Ferrari, I would say, but they have been lucky in few of the races initially, not so Sainz particularly. That's the overall take what I have from my side for Imola.
Yeah, so let's. I would agree with you. I think Bottas maybe a couple of more laps and he would have anyways taken Russell. He was just within one second, and that was that. But let's first go to the start of the race. It was actually quite a good start for Max Verstappen and Perez. I think we saw it in the sprint race where the Ferraris had a better start than the Red Bulls. But this time around, I don't think the tires had warmed up pretty well for both the Ferrari cars. Actually, they were stuck in the middle. In fact, Lando Norris also had a better start than Charles and Carlos Sainz. So just take us through the start and what happened after that.
I think the most important part which you mentioned is the condition. The tire warm up for Ferrari, that did not happen because what we saw in the sprint race, the temperature and the atmosphere was completely different. The track was dry, but when we started the main race, the track was completely wet. Although it was not raining, but they were on the intermediates, all of them. So I think Red Bull and McLaren had a very good start because they had better tire temperature management, at least for the conditions on the intermediates when they were running, and that helped Perez overtake Leclerc right in the starting of the race, and also it allowed Norris to go take over Leclerc from the P4 position. Now, what this meant was Sainz was completely sandwiched along all the McLarens ahead of him, and also there was a McLaren behind him. So in the first turn, it was also, although a racing incident, but it was unlucky for Sainz, I would say. That actually contributed to him crashing. Another incident which happened in the same crash was Mick Schumacher banging Alonso, and that damaged the side part of Alpine quite significantly, and which eventually led him to retire through the race. So these were the two major incidents, I would say, from the starting point of view, where the tire management temperature could have been better from Ferrari. Again, this is something which we can see from the hindsight because we saw them perform well, especially in FP1 when it was raining. So I'm not sure why that could not have been translated directly to the racing scenario. But yeah, it was a bit unlucky day for Ferrari, because even the DRS part, even if it was not raining, it took quite some time for the race director to implement the DRS.
Yeah,
Because they were quite.
I was about to come to that DRS part. But before moving to that, just about the Sainz and Ricciardo crash, I think Sainz has been extremely unlucky. He, even from the first race itself in Bahrain, he got a podium. He did say that he was not that comfortable with the car. And then the moment he starts getting comfortable, these are the sort of things that happened. It also pushed Ricciardo into 18th position. Just a thought experiment. If that crash wouldn't have happened, looking at how Lando Norris drove, looking at how Leclerc drove, what do you think would have happened to the race? Do you think it would have been actually pretty close between all the three, Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren, or do you think that the race would have anyways panned out almost like this?
See, considering all the other factors which were there in the racing scenario, I still feel after the start which Ferrari received, right, it would have been very difficult for Leclerc or Sainz to compete for the 1 or 2 position because of the unavailability of the DRS initial part. But I still feel it would have been difficult for someone like Mercedes or Alfa Romeo to, overtake McLaren that easily. So if Ricciardo would have been there and Sainz would have been there, I would still feel it would have been top to finish for Red Bull, 3-4 for Ferrari, and 5-6 for McLaren. That is something, again, in the hindsight, something which we can talk about.
So let's talk about the DRS. The track seemed to dry out pretty quickly. There was no rain once the race started.
Yeah.
There were chances of rain. We did hear a couple of radio conversation where they were saying that there are chances of rain in the next 20 or 30 minutes, but it didn't happen. A lot of people, including some of the commentators, felt that they should have brought in the DRS by the 13th or 14th lap. Some felt by the 20th, but it was as late as mid of the race, mid of the race, when the DRS came in. And obviously, one of those guys who lost out was Charles Leclerc, because he was extremely close to Sergio Perez. And if at that point of time he would have had DRS available, he could have done way better. Apart from that, there were also a lot of runners in the middle who also would have loved to have DRS at that point of time. So yeah, why do you think that happened? What was the rationale behind bringing it so late?
See, I understand from a spectator point of view that we were missing the racing scenario. I understand why the commentators were saying and the team was saying that it should have been done earlier. But one major thing which I feel would have impacted the decision of race director was the incident in the first lap. Because although it was classified as a racing incident between Sainz and Ricciardo, but the contributing factor was the grip because of the wet nature of the surface. So I think that is something which race director would have taken into consideration. Now the second thing would have been the weather radar, which all the teams, including the FIA, also got it completely wrong. We always heard that rain is coming. It was like watching Game of Thrones all game where winter was coming and it never came. So until the last season. But yeah, I think those are the two things which was impacting the race director to hold on to the decision for the DRS. I don't think so any other reasons apart from that.
So let's talk about Charles Leclerc's race, what it could have been, what it was. This was an important race. He has been he has been the best driver till now. I mean, yes, Verstappen has won both the races that he has completed, but he has had a couple of retirements as well. And Charles Leclerc has looked like the best driver on the grid. It's something that even the Red Bull chief said, that he and Max are driving at a very different level. But then he goes out and makes a very rookie mistake, and it did look like the pressure got to them. Yeah. So what did you think about the strategy of bringing him back for the second time into the pit, and what they were trying to achieve? I know that if that crash would not have happened, he was very close to Perez. Maybe he would have overtaken him in a lap or two, and then would have said that it was a great move by Ferrari. And do you think it was only because of the crash that people felt that it was not a good move, or do you think that it was actually a good move and it was only the pressure that got to him a bit? And if it was pressure, then how do you see him performing in the coming races? Because this could get pretty tight. This season could get pretty tight.
See, there are a lot of things which you spoke about, right? Firstly, since Leclerc is competing for the title position, that was the only move Ferrari could have made, to allow him to overtake Perez, because both were on the degrading tires, and it would have been difficult for Leclerc to overtake Perez in the older tires. Now, the second point which you talked about, pressure. Yes, Leclerc was very close to Perez after the second pit stop. But one thing we are forgetting here is that because there was a mistake from Perez, he overran on the grass, and that actually allowed Leclerc to close the gap between himself and Perez. Now, one thing which we have seen from the starting of the season is, irrespective whether it's Ferrari or Red Bull, whoever is leading the race or whoever is ahead in the running scenario, it is very difficult to overtake that car and take the lead. Yes, there have been instances where Verstappen and Leclerc have interchanged the positions, where Verstappen overtook Leclerc and Leclerc got it back. But throughout the initial 5 races of the season, that is something which is very visible, that it is, although the racing scenario has been different, the cars can run closer to each other for a longer period of time, but it's not very easy, whether it's Red Bull or Ferrari, to overtake each other, whoever is leading the race. Now, you talked about the pressure from Leclerc. Yes, I think there was a bit of pressure, to overtake Perez, because at the end he also understands, and Ferrari also understands, the fight for the title of the championship is with Verstappen, not with Perez, at least as of this moment. But what I would say Ferrari has underestimated is Perez is a much better driver this season with the car which he has, as comparison to Verstappen, what he's facing. Yes, it was because probably Red Bull have a different kind of team dynamics, where Perez already understands that he's the second driver. So P2 is the best what he can hope for if Verstappen is P1. And that is something where I feel Ferrari would be lacking, because come the time which we have already spoken, where Sainz is leading, I don't think that Leclerc will be able to get that spot back.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happens, we'll have to see. But considering the fact that Sainz has had a stinker of a season till now, I don't know how. I mean, if he is leading, there's no way that he would be giving that back. Saying that, just on that point about defending and about how Perez drove well, yes, we have spoken about how DRS. If they would have got DRS in the initial stages, maybe things would have been different. But I still feel that Perez drove a pretty good defensive race. I mean, he did try to. There were a couple of moments where he tried to increase his own speed and maybe try to get near Max, but Max was way far ahead. And I mean, in two consecutive races, we have seen drivers doing the Grand Slam by really being on the top every time.
And another important thing, what we need to understand from the racing point of view is, although it was not raining and the track was drying, but there was a racing line on which the drivers can drive on slicks. But when there were instances where they need to overtake the other car, the other part of the track was still wet. So it was a bit tricky for drivers to overtake on slicks, especially during on a wet patch. So that was still holding back some of the drivers to overtake whoever is there in front of them.
Yeah, it was not easy actually overtaking. But once the DRS came in, a lot of it did take place. Mostly in the DRS zone, and I think that if not for that incident, I think we would have seen a pretty normal race at the end. I'm not sure whether Leclerc could have, in fact, even if he would have crossed Perez, I don't know whether he would have stuck there at number 2 or Perez would have got his position back. But in trying to get 19 points out of the race, they actually did not get any kind of thing. He did finish 6th, but it's just like half of those. So let's talk about a few other racers who actually had pretty good race. One of them is George Russell. Now, I was actually going to ask you about Hamilton and what the hell is going on with him, but let's first get into the positives and let's talk about George Russell. He has finished all the races in top four position. He has been doing much better than Lewis Hamilton in that car. He seems to have gotten a good grip of what the new Mercedes is. Uh, what is happening between them? Why is it that Russell is driving so well? I know that the Mercedes does not have the pace of the Ferrari or the Red Bull
Yeah.
right now. It's fine. It happens. There are seasons when it happens. I think the fact that Mercedes have won now 8 constructor championship, they might have felt a bit invincible, but it's not the case. These things happen. But why is there so much difference between both the drivers? Because even in Ferrari or in Red Bull, yes, we know that one of them is the number one driver. It's quite apparent, but the difference between both the drivers is not that much. I mean, on any given day, Perez could actually win the race, or Sainz could actually do much better
Yeah.
than Leclerc. So, what is happening there?
See, firstly, we have to accept that Russell is driving better than Hamilton as of this moment.
Yeah,
Now, the
that's
second thing
quite
which you
evident.
mentioned about the difference between Perez and Verstappen in the team, let's consider the last year scenario where the cars were different. It was very difficult for Perez to match Verstappen, irrespective of whichever track it was. So that was a difference between the drivers. Now, what is happening this year is, since because of the change in regulations, Hamilton is accustomed to a particular kind of car which he has driven for last 8 years. Russell is coming to a new dynamic and a new car for the first time. So I think it is much more easier for him to adapt to all the changes which is happening. But talking about that, he has also been a bit lucky, considering the racing situations. Yes, there is a difference between Hamilton and Russell in terms of the lap timings, but that difference is not, like a fourth position versus a P14 position, which Hamilton got. So yes, he's driving better, but there have been racing incidents like he was able to make a cheap pit stop last time during a yellow flag, and all those kind of scenario where he has been a bit lucky, but the difference is visible.
Yeah, I think I yeah, it did feel when Russell signed for Mercedes, you knew that he was going to challenge Lewis. It was not going to be a Lewis and Bottas kind of story. This was quite different. But to see that happening in the first five race, and to see that Russell kind of overperforming, or not, I won't say overperforming. I think Russell has a pretty high ceiling. He can match, given a good car, he can match Verstappen and Leclerc, and I think so can Lando Norris. I think these four drivers are quite good. But whatever is happening with Hamilton and his car, I mean, it's a bit sad. He could have overtaken Schumacher last year with 8 championships. It still is on 7. He has the most number of wins. He has the most number of podium finishes. But how does it feel when your competitor last year actually laps you? I mean, that uh, it was heartbreaking for some. Some were just cheering. I mean, there was a lot of Schadenfreude going in the Red Bull camp, and in even in other camps as well. I mean, seeing Lewis Hamilton being lapped, that's not happened in 15 years. That's not something that is that you see every day. And Hamilton has been in a good car since the day he started driving. So this was pretty bad for him.
See, one thing which I would like to say here, what that we haven't done in our channel is, although I'm not an expert, I'm still a student of what we are doing in an F1. But a driver is as good as the car which you have. When last season, after Abu Dhabi, a lot of people, the fans especially, were talking about what a good driver and great driver Hamilton is, and Verstappen is not a good driver. I'm not saying that this is in your face, but what I'm trying to say here is, yes, Hamilton is a very good driver, but he's only as good as what the car he's given and the teammate which he has. He has been with Nico Rosberg only for a few seasons, and the rivalry between them was easily visible, where it was not very easy for Hamilton to defeat his teammate. But with Bottas, he had a pretty chilled teammate, which will not be easy right now, because right now his performance is subjected to what the car he is given and how is he is performing as comparison to his team.
Yeah, I think it is. If this continues, it could be one pretty bad year for Hamilton, and then after that, we actually don't know what's going to happen. Let's move to another driver who did well, and it's Hamilton's ex-teammate. I mean, Valtteri Bottas has done pretty well in Alfa Romeo since he has come in. Yes, there have been some engine-related issues, some technical issues with him, but when he's on the track, when he's driving, I mean, he looks $1 million, and I think uh, he did well for himself in Mercedes. He won a lot of the races, but it was a kind of a secondary role to Hamilton. I think he's enjoying his time at Alfa Romeo. It's also the fact that Alfa Romeo has got a good engine. I mean, this time the Ferrari engine is actually doing well. Haas are performing well. Alfa Romeo is doing well. Bottas must be relishing this opportunity to be the lead in a new team, a team that, and it's not like Alfa Romeo is kind of a new team in the sense that this team has been there since the start of the of F1. It's a new team for him. It's a new environment for him. I think he would be enjoying that.
Absolutely. I think it was a deja vu for Bottas and Russell, what happened last year at the same track. But as you said, yes, he's driving really well, especially with the new team setup, new support system, and the new engine which he has got. And the other important thing which you mentioned, although he knows he's a lead driver, but he does not have those kind of restrictions which were there in Mercedes when, he knows he had a very good car, a championship winning car. But a lot of the instances, the team orders were not complying in terms of, which were positively impacting him. So, yeah, he's in a very good space, I would say, because even if Zhou Guanyu he's also driving very well. But right now, it will take some time for him to catch up to someone like Bottas, especially who has that amount of wealth of experience.
Yeah, and there's something to say about being the lead driver in a team and being the secondary driver in a team, if I could use that word, although most of the team do say that no, both of their drivers are equal, but we know that in most of the cases it's not that. And in fact, in teams which are actually looking for championship and all, it kind of is not at all, unless you have two very equally good driver positions, something like maybe Leclerc, Sainz, although Leclerc I believe is a better driver than Sainz, has a better ceiling than Sainz, but it's still a bit equal. But there are cases where like let's say Max and Sergio, that there are two different drivers. So one thing we need to understand is that if you are a lead driver, you do get better upgrades. I mean, there are the strategies for a lead driver is much different.
Yeah.
A lot of people may say that cars are the same. The cars may be the same, but there are a lot of other things that goes inside. And I think Bottas may have been felt a bit wronged by Mercedes, because yes, both the cars were same, but I felt that Lewis was getting a lot more attention. His car was being treated well. Bottas was there to kind of support him, and given an opportunity, if the same thing, same upgrades, if the same level of the same kind of strategies would have been given to Bottas as well, I think he could have challenged Hamilton. He is that good of a driver, and I think now that he's the lead in another team, it may not be a championship winning team, but he would be enjoying that role. That's what I would say about Bottas.
See, the important point for Bottas here is Mercedes is at a place where he's able to compete with them. And that is a positive thing for Bottas, I think.
Yeah, and I think he would have loved for the race to go on for another couple of laps, because
absolutely.
that he was so close to Russell, and I mean he would have just loved for himself to overtake Russell there.
Don't worry, it will happen. So, in some races, it's going to happen where he will overtake them. It is going to happen.
Yeah, it is going to happen. I mean, and the way Lewis is driving, I will not be surprised that if kind of Bottas finishes over Lewis in the championship standing as well, the way both of them are going. So yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. But there were a few other notable mentions that we must make here. Aston Martin became the last team to get into the points table, and now we have all the teams in the points. So that was a good race for them. Alex Albon, finished 11th, another good race. So it seems that the season seems to have started pretty well. I mean, 10 teams, all of them in the points table within the first 5 races. This is a competitive season.
Absolutely, and I'm really impressed with how Alex Albon has been able to extract out whatever is there, which Williams is offering. He has been a very good driver, at least in the last couple of races. Again, it's way too early to see and say what is happening. Maybe we'll be able to talk about much better in the summer break.
Yeah, so we have the first of the American Grand Prix in Miami next week. So we'll be looking forward to that. But this was great. And I could see how happy you were to see the Red Bull 1-2. And yeah, I know you are wearing that. There was I think, not that great a day. Sainz crashed out. Leclerc could have finished second, could have finished third, ended up being in the 6th position. Happy for Lando Norris. He kind of keeps showing us that he's a much better driver, and given the right condition and right car and circumstances, he could win races. So that was good. So
thank you, we have only talked about factual things and logical things in our channel. Let me say something philosophical here. Okay. Generally what we see is, over a period of time, luck will neutralize things. That's what generally we hear commentators talk about, whether it may be cricket, whether it may be F1. I think the initial part of the race, as you mentioned, for Sainz, he was able to score the podiums, although it was not the best races for him. But I think over the season, yes, there will be few races where drivers will have to keep there, be there, although it is, whether it may be P4 or P5, what we saw for the Silverstone last year. If not for that crash, if Verstappen would have been able to score even P2 or P3, the race would not have gone to Abu Dhabi. So I think those initial 1 or 2 small moments are very important, especially when the championship is very close. 1 point, 2 point, 3 point will be going to matter a lot in the end of the season.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean that's why I felt that. I know what Ferrari were trying to do with Leclerc, with the fact that getting him a new car. They knew that they have the pace. They have the pace to match to match Red Bull. I mean, yes, Red Bull has a faster straight line speed, but it's minimal over the race. It kind of balances out. Ferrari has been much more reliable as well, and I can see what they were trying to do, but. In trying to get 19, they ended up with 8 points, where they could have easily pocketed in 15 points and gone home. And considering how championships have been won in the past, I mean, last year was a good example. It was, till the last race, it was equal on points. And if this happens, in trying to get 19, they got 8, and they could have finished on 15. So this 7-point difference could be huge. And even for the constructor championship, it's the same thing. The saying that Red Bull would also need to improve their reliability, because it can't happen that Max DNFs one race and then wins, and then DNF and then wins. So that's not going to help either Max's case or Red Bull's case. So we'll have to see what happens. I think Sainz has been on the bad end of the luck a bit. I think he's not just better driver, but he deserves much better with the kind of car that he has, which is kind of a championship winning car. I mean, this is just a bit of bad luck. I'm
sure we'll see much better races from him.
Yeah, I hope that he does well in Miami. So that's it from our side. Thank you everyone for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, write back to us. It was great, and hoping to see the tables turned in Miami. Let's see what happens. Thank you, Anshul.
Thanks, Sam.